You're in the belly of a horrible machine, and that machine is bleeding to death. But contrary to what you might think, you're not trapped in it. So get out of that machine, get into this one, because it kills bourgeois sentimentality. Common Filth Radio, best in the world, and I have the best t-shirts in the world. They are back in stock, small, medium, large, extra large, all freshly stocked, ready for you to purchase. Get yours today at commonfilthradio.bandcamp.com/merch. And every order comes with some goodies. You get a Communist Pope sticker and the most recent episode of Common Filth Extra for free, which might be episode 50, might not be. I usually record them before I record this, but I have not yet, so we'll see if I get 51 up in time. But in the meantime, 50 is still free if you purchase one of these shirts. So lots of free goodies. Link to the merch page is below as always. And speak of the devil, or, at least a devil, we're going to talk about Pope Francis. He said something really interesting back in October 24th, 2016. Really interesting. This passed under my radar up until I saw this really good LiveSite news article, which I might go back to later on in the show. 2016, the year Pope Francis finally showed his hand, but first we'll read from cruxnow.com. Title of the article, People Rigid About Law Are Often Hypocrites, Pope Francis Says, written by Carol Glatz, October 24th, 2016, Catholic News Service. Says, people rigidly bound to the law suffer pain, pride, and often live a double life. Francis said in a morning homily. God's law was made not to make us slaves, but to make us free, to make us children of God, he said in his homily during Mass at Domus Sancta Martha on October 24th. The Pope looked at the day's gospel reading from St. Luke 13:10 through 17, in which the leader of a synagogue is furious that Jesus heals a woman on the Sabbath. Jesus calls the religious leader a hypocrite because there is no problem releasing livestock from their tithes for water on holy days, but it is considered wrong to release a woman from the chains of Satan. The Pope said that in the gospel, Jesus often accuses those who rigidly adhere to the law as being hypocrites. Hypocrites. They are not free children of God, but are slaves of the law. Behind this inflexibility, he said, there's always something else, and that's why Jesus says hypocrites. There's something hidden in that person's life. In many cases, a double life. But there's also some kind of illness, he said. Inflexibility is not a gift of God, he said. Meekness, yes. Benevolence, yes. Forgiveness, yes. But rigidity, no. Now, I can go into how painfully wrong this is, how context blind this is, but what do you expect from a cocksucker like this? That's what he is, among many other things. So let's read that again. He says there's something hidden in that person's life who actually adheres to God's law, failing to realize that Jesus, in these verses here, as we read, he was dealing with somebody as context blind as Pope Communist Idiot. Pope Francis doesn't like standards. He doesn't like that people take God's word as seriously as God does. So putting it in even more plain English, Pope Francis is saying that those who have standards and adhere to them, and call out those who breach those standards upon agreeing to them, at least ostensibly, they have something to hide, he says. So he says people with a spine with a backbone have something to hide. Be squishy, be moderate. Everything's up for negotiation. Everything's situational. Everything's relative. That's what Pope Francis says of God's word and those who adhere to it, those who adhere to any standards at all. If you've been following the drama that has taken place in the internet right-wing intelligentsia, hug box, loony bin, you'll see what has taken place there is in direct contradiction of the Pope's assertion that those who are too rigid have something to hide. Yes, the originators of that purity spiraling meme, the rightstuff.biz, which we'll now refer to as the buttstuff.biz, all of their head honchos were doxed in the last week or two. And no dox was more damaging than the ones revealed about Mike Enoch, the leader of the flunky operation they have going on over there. It was revealed that Mike Enoch, co-host of the Daily Showa, Where Holocaust jokes, yeah, make those, but, oh, you question anything that happened in 9/11? Whoa, that's going too far, bro. He's married to a Jew. He is literally sleeping with his alleged enemy. And he also implied on several occasions that he is part Jewish himself. So he's been living a lie. And his entire inner circle is directly culpable in the lie. Which is not surprising because all those retards do is lie. They lied about me doxing somebody in their flunky group. They lied about the Forum Iron March doxing them. So this is poetic justice. The docs were dropped by anti-fascists, anonymous image board posters, and if the anti-fascists are to be believed, their own. The anti-fascists who ended up doxing the right stuff people said that Ghoul provided them with many docs. Now, in the process, we found out that Ghoul has 2 mommies and he's quite active in their life, which explains a lot of things because he was the only person at the time my involvement with them ended that I had any problem with. I had several arguments with him about the evils of sodomy, and he always jumped to the defense of the sodomite. And I didn't know he had 2 mommies that he loved very much at that time. I thought he was a homosexual himself. And I still think he's a sodomite. After all, he did install a homosexual crossdresser as a moderator of the Right Stuff forum, calling him a very reliable guy. And that very reliable guy posted nude pictures of himself on a public forum not too long after that. So they cry wolf about doxing, they lie every time about that, and then they actually get doxed, and it has nothing to do with any of the people they initially accused. They also lie about being anti-LGBT, despite the fact that they consort with Grindr Greg Johnson of Countercurrents Publishing, who infamously stated, homophobia is Jewish. I did a whole episode of Common Filth Extra about that subject. According to a listener of mine, he says, I think they even banned Florian Geyer's article about the dangers of the sodomite within like 30 minutes or something when it was published on The Right Stuff. I planned on reading it, but then Sven had to delete it. Florian is the host of the Mysterium Fasces podcast. They also took down an episode of Nationalist Review online for being too anti-sodomite. So what does this tell you? And that's all in addition to the fact that they installed at one time a homosexual crossdresser as a moderator of their forums. Well, let's get back to Mike Enoch so we get a bigger picture of this whole thing. His wife goes to drag queen shows. His wife was the chapter president in high school of a Jewish supremacist anti-Christian organization. She also has an image of herself on the internet, right there out in the open, for all her friends to see of her simulating fellatio on a pickle. Mike Enoch's wife on her YouTube channel says, I'm Jewish on a YouTube video description I'll just read it from here. Somebody put this in a paste bin. Of trannies doing a Christmas song posted a month ago, and it is in two Jewish groups on Flickr. One is simply called Jewish, and the other is something else. The YouTube video saying she's Jewish on December 11th, 2016. See video description. Video is a tranny singing. His wife also pushes pro-gay and pro-tranny material. Again, this is evidence from many sources, including the YouTube video used as proof of point one. This is also obvious from her Flickr account, and from what is most likely her personal website where she states, what could possibly bring tixgirl.com back to life after all these years? Social media, an appetite out there for my vintage concert photos and drag queens. Yes, drag queens. RuPaul's Drag Race drag queens. I'm a fangirl of many queens and everything RuPaul's Drag Race. But my heart truly belongs to Adore Delano, or Danny Noriega when he looks like a boy. Her professional YouTube with the summary of new and vintage concert photos from both the photo pit and the fan perspective. She also added homosexual literature to an Amazon wishlist that was under Mike Enoch's name, but there's evidence that their account was shared. So it's more evidence of her pro-sodomite leanings and the platform's pro-sodomite leanings. They scrub any anti-sodomite material from their website. They add sodomites in leadership positions. They tolerate people who say homophobia is Jewish and that men should explore their bisexual feelings because that's what they did in pagan societies. And they're cool with this guy. He's been on The Daily Show at least once, to my knowledge, and yeah, all of his pro-sodomite nonsense is out there and very easy to see, so It's very clear how Mike Enoch feels about the sodomite. He thinks they're great. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that he thinks they're not okay, that they're dangerous and they ruin nations, which, there's certainly enough proof out there of that. So let's say he feels privately another way. If your wife really respects you, if the woman in your life really respects you as a man, she will adopt your views as her own. So she doesn't respect him at all if he is, in fact, anti-LGBT, which he isn't. But again, for the sake of argument, let's say she doesn't respect him. And if his views match her views, then that proves everything I've ever said about the alt-right. Just more and more evidence supporting the assertions I have made about those retards. I'm going to read a good comment that I received from a listener of mine on the last episode. I didn't talk about this on the last episode because the line's share of drama had yet to take place. It says, the fact that an organization like anti-fascists easily infiltrated TRS within a short amount of time should tell you something about TRS. Both don't denounce anti-theism, blasphemously mocking Jesus, aren't critical of sodomy, Enoch's wife even promoted it, in addition to all the other gay shit that the butt stuff promotes, contain predominantly white members, and fear judgment in the form of the purity spiraling meme. That's purity spiraling really is the right-wing, edgy idiots version of don't judge, don't judge, don't judge, don't purity spiral. Why do they come up with the stupidest names for everything, like counter signaling? We already have a word for counter signaling that doesn't sound like it was invented by some guy on his last AIDS cocktail. It's called disagreeing. So when you people tell me, stop counter signaling, you're basically saying stop disagreeing. Like, say that to yourself. Say that to somebody. Stop disagreeing. You sound like a bitch. And continuing with the comment, not to mention that Jews consider leftists anti-Semitic, and most leftists segregate themselves from minorities despite their love for diversity. Those groups aren't different from each other because most of their core actions and values are the same. I was a fool for not connecting the dots earlier. Hey, I was a fool too, but that's what they are. They're racist liberals who want nothing more than safety and comfort and the privilege of making fun of people without having any consequences for that. They want to convince themselves of their own superiority and hate those who highlight the flaws in their society, which are usually minorities. They just want to be veal wrapped in bubble wrap. They want safety and comfort, and they just want a nice, cozy death. That's all they want. Their dreams are entirely of the middle class variety. All right, they're afraid of Black Lives Matter and radical Islam because those people actually do something about what they believe. And the whiteys at the right stuff are terrified of this because they know they can't compete. So they play fantasy government on their forums. They form a safe space for themselves where they can pretend like they're in charge of shit and they can make fun of people even though they have no beliefs to back up those jabs they make at other groups. Do you understand something? That making fun of something is not the same thing as being against it? I mean, this is Generation X in a nutshell. They make fun of everything yet stand for nothing. Oh, sure, they might make fun of sodomites one or two times, but they have no problem with them morally. They don't. And the only reason why they don't like black people and Muslims is because black people and Muslims are doing what they only wish they could do. They don't like people who breach their feelings of safety and comfort. They don't like anybody that can bite back against them. So it's no surprise that when it comes to the Jewish question, they don't really care. They're joking about it. They don't have any serious convictions about it. You could argue that Jews push a lot of depravity, but these are people who think that depravity and conduct have nothing to do with the health of a nation, of a tribe, of a society, of a race. You could argue that ethnic Jews are behind pornography, behind the nonsense that Hollywood puts out, the nonsense that gets put on television. I mean, it's a bad argument because they only sell where there is a pre-existing market. They are pure market reactionaries. So you could argue it, but it's a bad argument. Regardless, they don't actually believe it because all of their inner circle was covering up for Mike Enoch. And he's insinuated that he's Jewish himself. So Enoch and his crew, who were covering up for him this whole time, are market reactionaries themselves. They're benefiting off of the growing anti-Semitic sentiment across the internet that has existed and has been growing long before they ever benefited from it. I can see how you could rationalize Jews for pushing cultural Marxism in the form of LGBT nonsense. I could. It's a bad argument because you reach the end of it and you realize, well, who's buying it? The merchant sells, they'll go and buy, but you know what? They're no strangers to making bad arguments over there. So they'd take it. If they were really serious about it, they'd say, oh, Jews push LGBT stuff, but they don't because they support it. They support it because they delete articles off the website talking about how horrible the sodomite is for society. His wife goes to drag shows. Shit, maybe Enoch even tagged along with her a few times. We don't know that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But at the end of the day, she went and he let her. So if he's really against all of that, either she doesn't respect his wishes or he agrees with it. And given that they remove anti-sodomite articles and podcasts from their website, well, that tells you everything you need to know. But at the end of the day, they're all liars. They're opportunistic liars. They lie about people doxing them. They lie about their true position on things. They lie about the nature and motivations of those who are in charge of their website. And every single one of them who was close to Enoch knew him in meat space, in real life, which many of them did. They all covered up for him. On Twitter, J_Stevens_14 sent me this. Who could have foreseen that the most vocally anti-Christian figurehead in the alternative right was a massive fraud and unapologetic about it? The atheist cries out, Christianity is Jude, as he goes to drag queen shows with his Marxist Jewish wife. Mike Enoch and his lady fulfilling the stereotype of the Christ-hating Jews. Are you beginning to understand why they invented the purity spiraling meme? Enoch and his company are very uncomfortable by people who could actually back up their words with how they live. They can back it up with blood and heartbeats. That's what Christ did. He did everything, said everything, and confirmed it all with his blood. So, like the alternative right at large, Enoch hates Christ. Enoch thinks he should be God. Now, a lot of his followers think he is because, well, you attract all of these crazed, insane, bitter, lonely people, and he doesn't tell them stop being that way. If politics makes you like this, let it go. It's life's too short to go through life like this. No. He never tells people right from wrong. He never sets his own on the right path. And now you understand why. So the only thing is, oh, you have to like white people. White people didn't do nothing, and you have to do something for the movement. And oh, don't be too extreme about it. Don't purity spiral about it. Because, you know, God forbid that you back up your words with actions. You back up your words with how you live your life. You know, it's a very foreign concept to him. It's a foreign concept for those closest to him. Those who have covered up for him this whole time. Also, Enoch's wife, more on her. She worked for a company called JIMPACT. She either works or worked in the past for them. So a company, JIMPACT, that it has in its description, our work across key markets with some of the world's leading organizations has helped us develop a range of leadership, communication, and, drumroll, diversity tools. The only sincere words that Mike Enoch has ever spoken in his sad, pathetic life were from a restaurant menu. My friend Matt said of the whole situation on Twitter, at True Rebellion WA, interesting thing about the Enoch docs is how people have responded to it. Quote, it's okay because I'm also a hypocrite, unquote, is the most common theme. Instead of striving to be better, it seems most folks have just chosen their brand of degeneracy to be acceptable in the movement. Instead of deleting their pornography, they just declare that pornography is acceptable. It's pretty alarming that even basic requirements, such as don't watch porn, don't be gay, are almost impossible for the alternative right to live up to. This comment here that I received on a video says, all these months of TRS hating on Common Filth just because he is against accepting sodomy, and it turns out their fucking leader was not only a complete hypocrite, but his wife was actively promoting all the things ruining our civilization. And everybody close to him who knew, again, complicit in covering it up. They are all the biggest liars you will ever encounter in your life. And back in October, 8pol found out that TRS, again, the buttstuff.biz, was shilling on 8chan. Today we got confirmation that we were being shilled hardcore by TRS. Pics related, they're all screen grabs from the TRS forums where they are discussing their subversion of our board openly. The thing is, they have started already, and that's what kicked this whole thing off. They stirred up a hornet's nest, and they paid the price for it. And this is on Pol Meta. This wasn't on Pol proper, 8pol proper, Pol Meta. But this post stood out to me here. I thought this was great. It just summed it up perfectly. It says, "That's what Grid's Greg Johnson wants. That's what the TRS podcast wants. A nice white liberal ethno-state to stay in, maybe suck some dicks and cower away from the outside world. No goals, no destiny, nothing that Western civilization is worthy of. They expect to either subtly imply the millions of refugees to leave or get right-wing meme squads to kick them out and not face the consequences of what such an awakening active force would bring. These people just want their nice suburbs devoid of real value, just without the niggers and spics. It's pathetic and perfectly represents the Spenglerian decline talked about in podcasts mentioned above. We're not going to fade away to such a pathetic end because a bunch of weak faggots don't want to put the effort in and would prefer to write articles and shag. And we will not let you bring us down to such a low standard." Another one says, "You TRS need to fuck off. Honestly, let's take a brief look at you. Pro-faggotry, pro-civic nationalism, live in constant fear of my purity spirals, to the point where you fear purity, openly mock Gamergate but repeat all the same mistakes of it. You bought into the alt-right name Jew the moment it appeared. You become PR-obsessed faggot lovers willing to sacrifice value after value for more followers. Dismissed and mocked 9/11 conspiracies over concerns of PR, choosing popular perception over championing the truth. The biggest meme you forced is Pinochet, a literal central banking ZOG bot. Takes credit for 8chan memes and then attempts to heavy-handedly shill and subvert the site. Takes credit for the growing surge of white nationalism as if it was your doing, probably the source of this surge of Reddit spacing. You're a subversive element that's more concerned with their reputation and personal power than doing what's best for whites. All of you should be tossed in the bog." Again, their leadership is made up of nothing but market reactionaries. Behavior that is very common to a certain genetic composition, possibly likely possessed by its leader. When somebody told me they were talking shit about me a couple weeks ago, I said they won't make a difference because they are no different. And I am right once again. Because, like I've said before, in this business, the truth is everything. If you have a voice and you are lying to people, people will eventually find out. You will be exposed as a fraud, just like what happened here. That's all. That's it. If you comment upon the society you live in and you do it publicly, you better back it up. And you better back it up in how you live. Because, oh, I do something for the movement. You can only hide behind that for a little bit. Because your movement is not God. Typically, any movement is entirely self-serving, which is what you have here. That's all. That's it. And good riddance. Now I want to talk about hashtag beat up Richard Spencer, because he got sucker punched in the back of the head while he was talking to a camera. I swear, this guy has never met a media personality or a camera that he didn't want to talk to. The guy is well, let's not use the word whore here, but almost a whore. Now, if you don't know who Richard Spencer is, he famously said that homosexuality is implicit white identity and that homosexuality has been a part of European societies, and this guy is beloved. He's beloved all throughout the autistic alternative right. Nobody ever calls this guy out on his bullshit. None of them do. Because that would be purity spiraling. Don't puncture the hug box with self-criticism. That wouldn't be nice. So Richard Spencer got punched in the back of the head, sucker punched in the back of the head by what people think is an anti-fascist person. And when he got sucker punched, he's talking to the camera. He's like, oh, he shows a frog pin on his suit. He's like, look, it's a meme. This is our mascot. It's Pepe. And right when he mentioned it, he got sucker punched in the back of the head. Now, Pepe, Kek, whatever, that frog mascot represents the ancient Egyptian god of chaos. And this is the deity, the alternative lifestyle right, That was before. They want chaos, and they got chaos. You know, it's funny, Earl of Grey told me that Spencer called Christians a bunch of pacifist cucks. Yet, if you watch the video, he doesn't get knocked out by the punch. He's able to run away 20 feet away from where he got punched. Looks back, it looks like he's about to fucking cry. So he's a pacifist little bitch, and he calls Christians pacifists. Projecting a little bit too much there, dickless dicky. And don't give me the bullshit of, oh, he was surrounded, he couldn't fight back. Bullshit. It was one lone crazed wacko. Think of the message he could have sent if he ran after him and took him down. If he ran after and took down his assailant, think of the message that would have sent, but no. He ran off like the little bitch that he is. He could have fought back. He could have ran down his assailant because there was only one. He wasn't surrounded. He wasn't surrounded by them. If there were more of these thugs who were of a mind to punch him, to beat him up, they would have done it right then and there, but there was only one. There was no excuse for him to not chase that guy down. So I've been making fun of Dickless Dicky on Twitter, and I'm getting his, white knights. Oh, this guy, he said nice things about us, therefore he's doing a lot for us. You retards realize he's not doing anything for you, he's just giving you verbal opiates. Oh wow, he said nice things about us. I better white knight for him on Twitter. And people are spurging out over black crime statistics now, even though I'm just making fun of him for being a bitch. But it's interesting, you gotta put this into context. These people think that white genocide is because blacks commit half the crimes even though they're 13% of the population. Now, this might be true if we had a ridiculously high murder rate, but in America, it's like 3.9 per 100,000. Now, this puts America in about the mid-tier of murder rates, but it's not a genocide out there. In other words, white demographic obsolescence has fuck all to do with blacks holding up liquor stores. Who said it? Civilizations do not die by homicide, but always suicide. Always. Without exception. Black people hold up liquor stores and kill a lot of their own. Therefore, white people can't have babies. That doesn't hold up. Demographic obsolescence lies with the demographic and not anybody else. It's white America's own decadence that's preventing it from ensuring a future for itself. They'd rather go to gay pride parades and go on vacation than raise families. And shit, the white people that have able-bodied children, they want their kids to grow up to be trannies or homosexuals. It's sick. It's like, how many stories have I read about single mothers who turn their kids into transsexuals? Oh, my son picked up a Barbie doll. We're cutting off his penis tomorrow. So the white people that are having kids, they are killing their kids. But Dickless Dicky taking a sucker punch to the back of the head is one of the greatest things I've ever seen now. There is a possibility that this is a staged stunt done entirely for attention. After all, he is a sodomite, and sodomites love attention. They are the biggest drama queens on the planet. So it fits. Like I said, he hasn't met a media personality or a camera that he didn't want to talk to. He's an attention whore. So there is something to that. There is something to be said about the possibility that this is a staged event, staged by him. But if that's true, he comes off as a complete bitch. You know that if he threw one punch back at that person, that could have said, again, I already said this, but that would have said more than any amount of words he could fit into one of his speeches. But he didn't, and he won't because, well, he's a eunuch. Moving on, Senegal troops move to Gambia border as JAMA faces ultimatum. Senegal is leading the operation, which is supported by Nigeria, and this is from the BBC.com, and other states in the region. Mr. JAMA has been told to leave office by the end of Wednesday and hand over to last month's election winner, Adama Barrow, who is currently in Senegal. And this is President Yahya Jammeh, who refuses to leave office. And here's why from the same article. Why is Mr. Jammeh refusing to leave office? Mr. Jammeh has declared a 90-day state of emergency, telling security forces to maintain absolute peace, law, and order. He says that there were irregularities in the election process, including the turning away of some of his supporters from polling stations and errors made by the Electoral Commission. Alright, so why am I talking about African politics? Why am I talking about the Senegalese president? Here's why. This is from RT.com, published back in May 2015. The president of the tiny African nation of the Gambia has reportedly threatened to kill any homosexuals in his country, adding to his longtime record of cracking down on homosexuality. President Yahya Jammeh says, "If you do it in the Gambia, I will slit your throat," said in a public speech in the Wolof language cited by Vice News. He says, "If you are a man and want to marry another man in this country and we catch you, no one will ever set eyes on you again and no white person can do anything about it." This is one of the most defiant things I have ever read, spitting in the face of the Western powers that be, because as we all know, the only thing Western governments, cultures, and societies really value is perversion. And this is reflected in how they treat those who do not value perversion the same. In this case, this perversion is sodomy. Now, isn't it interesting that Africa, like pretty much everywhere you go in Africa, homosexuality is either punishable by death or a lengthy prison sentence. And the most white nation in Africa, South Africa, is the only one that has legalized same-sex marriage, which is an absurdity promoted disproportionately by whites. Let me tell you something. Racism is not the third rail with whites. It's homophobia. It's transphobia. Any judgment of sexual perversion, white people won't let that slip. And that's why he says, if you are a man and want to marry another man in this country and we catch you, no one will ever set eyes on you again and no white person can do anything about it. He knows that it's not his fellow African leaders who take umbrage with the fact that he's not too kind to the homosexual. No, it's the white man government that takes umbrage with the fact that he's not kind to the homosexual. Overwhelmingly white nations like England, 50% of their young people identify as something not heterosexual. And that was according to a YouGov poll, a poll conducted by Generation What, which is a project started by several European Union television broadcasters, polled over 500,000 people belonging to the nations of the European Union, asking them about their sexual proclivities, among other things. That poll revealed that 1 in 5 European people, 1 in 5 pieces of Eurotrash want to try sodomy. It also revealed that 1 in 10 have tried it and enjoyed it, by their own admission. So President Jammeh of the Gambia is very deliberate when he says, if you are a man and want to marry another man in this country and we catch you, no one will ever set eyes on you again and no white person can do anything about it. Well, he's wrong in that no white person can do anything about it because Western nations can easily manipulate African elections. And this is after they cut aid the year before in 2014, December 2014. European Union cuts aid to the Gambia over human rights concerns, because punishing subhuman behavior is bad for human rights, apparently. In essence, no more Western money because you're mean to gay people. Homophilia is the white man's Alamo. They will not permit any homophobia in their ranks. Whites who stand against the gay mafia are in very short supply. The white man stands up to the sodomite, the African realizes what he is, and acts accordingly. Here's more proof. This was sent to me by Liberty Slap. Thank you, Liberty Slap. This is from all the way back in 2011, October 2011. Foreign aid for countries with gay rights records to be slashed, pledges Cameron, by Daniel Martin for the Daily Mail. David Cameron has pledged to slash aid to African countries with poor records on homosexual rights. The Prime Minister will tell struggling nations they will receive funding fines if persecution of gays continues. The government has already cut aid to Malawi by £19 million after 2 gay men were sentenced to 14 years hard labor. The southern African nation also plans to bring in tough anti-lesbian laws. Malawi received £200 million from Britain over the past 3 years. International Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell could also reduce aid to Uganda and Ghana unless they drop laws against gays. Uganda, which is due to receive £70 million in 2011, plans to punish homosexuality with the death penalty. The president of Ghana, which gets £36 million a year, has promised to bring in measures to check the menace of homosexuality. Now, if you hear this rhetoric from any European or American politician, they'll put him in jail in Europe and the guy won't ever have a career again in America. That's how we reward our own for their homophobia. And you might say, well, good, they're not getting foreign aid, it's not the point. They're punishing Russia in other ways. It's the fact that they're punishing them over this. Over their lack of acceptance of sodomy. That's what it is. It's the principle, not the punishment. It's the principle behind the punishment, not the punishment itself we need to look at. The underlying reason for current Western animosity towards Russia is the fact that Russia isn't that nice to gay people. You're not being nice. They're just like you and me. Except that white people think that LGBT nonsense is better than being normal and well-adjusted. So don't think that the white man's governments are targeting Africa just because they're African. No, it just so happens that Africa represents a disproportionate amount of homophobia in the world. They're the only people that use their governments to protect against the sodomite menace. All right, Africa doesn't want to become a place where you could go around place to place, business to business, demanding services that religious people would refuse because it's against their religion. Sodomites love going door to door, don't they? Looking for trouble. They always look for trouble. Everywhere they go, Africa doesn't want that for themselves. Why do we want it here in the West? In New York, they have a fucking human rights commission. And they fine anybody for using homophobic business practices. Same thing in Oregon. All right, we're all familiar with that story at this point. Fucking 6 figures. A 6-figure fine for not baking some queers a cake. And this is the menace that Fat Mike Enoch, that Richard Spencer, that David Cameron all support. They think it's a part of our culture. So if this is what white culture is, if this is what they want the white race to be, I will stand against the race they wish depravity upon, even if that race is my own. Because if the white race is going to aid and abet the sodomite enemy, if that's what we're going to be defined by, fuck it, it's done. Because the sodomite hates the family, they hate anybody that does the right thing for the right reason, they hate family people. They hate anybody whose impulse to give life is directed towards that which can only give it. In other words, the opposite pair of genitals that you have, they hate you. If you are a man and you take a wife, they fucking hate you. If you are a woman and you are attracted to men, they fucking hate you. The sodomite is the antithesis of the family. And if you have no families, you have no races, you have no nation. Oh, but they say nice things about white people. That's because white people are the only people stupid enough to put up with the sodomites of bullshit. Africa doesn't. Yet Europe and America and Canada and so on all think that it's a vital part of their culture. The sodomite is a dead man walking. They're already dead. So why does white culture place such a premium on protecting the sodomite? Could it be that white people have a death wish themselves, that they are fucking cursed? Maybe. But that's up to you. Do you want to be cursed or do you want to be blessed? If you want to be on the side of Dickless Dickie Spencer, Grinder Greg Johnson, Fat Mike Enoch, and all the other flunkies of the white race who want to pretend like they're supreme and better than everybody else, yet they don't want to earn it. In fact, have done nothing to earn status as the master race. You want to be on their side, full of implicit white identity and drag shows and talking about how homophobia is a Jewish conspiracy? If you want to walk upon that poisonous, stupid path, well, I'm going to laugh every time life gives you the bitch slapping you deserve. Speaking of the eternal homophile from rawstory.com, Trump advisors. President dancing with Caitlyn Jenner at inauguration would heal the LGBTQ community. Now, I think this is still happening as I'm recording this. I'm not sure. So this might not have happened. This might have happened. I don't know yet. It says some of Donald Trump's advisors are reportedly urging the president-elect to share at least one dance on inauguration night with Caitlyn Jenner, the former Olympic athlete turned conservative trans activist. How implicit. The New York Post's notorious Page 6 gossip column said on Thursday that key aides to Trump believe that seeing the Republican president dancing with a famous trans woman fucking woman. Well, no, never mind. Will heal the division between LGBTQ Americans and the incoming administration. It's a brilliant idea, said an anonymous Trump staffer to Page 6. The image of Trump dancing with Caitlyn would send a strong message that he supports gay rights and trans rights, the aide said. A picture is worth 1,000 tweets. Well, how many viral loads is it worth? Jenner's publicist, however, refused to speculate as to whether the dance will happen. Can't deal in hypotheticals, the rep said. We'll just have to wait and see. Mediaite.com said Jenner will be attending the inauguration. Yeah, okay, look, you'll make America great again. What, by turning into a fucking freak show? By lollygagging with perverts? Truvada Trump, everybody! Truvada Trump. I didn't come up with that name just out of the blue. There's precedent for it. Jenner, the once husband of Kris Jenner and patriarch of the Kardashian clan, transitioned to female in 2015, but has held on to her lifelong Republican ideals. Yes, of course you would, because white people are the only ones that'll entertain your depravity. On Wednesday, she tweeted. Brucey Boy tweeted, Republicans need help understanding LGBTQ issues, and I'm here to help. You think I give a fuck that the White House removed the LGBT page from its website when his life is an LGBT website? Look at the company he keeps. Look at his mentor, Roy Cohn, which I'm going to read. This is about Roy Cohn. Parties were held in the basement where, along with high society's homosexuals, transsexuals, and transvestites, one can find many illustrious souls who were there for the kick of watching and smelling. It was in Studio 54's Catacombs, writes Von Hoffman, that Roy Cohn held some of his biggest birthday bangs, attended on at least one occasion by Donald Trump. Typically disloyal, Cohn gave no support to homosexuals who were trying to win public acceptance. He called them fags, did all he could to make their lives miserable, lectured against them, berated politicians for any display of tolerance towards homosexuals, and urged laws to restrict their freedom. Yeah, because he lived it firsthand. He saw how horrible he was, because he saw how horrible it was because he was horrible. He was apparently a pederast, chicken hawk, as he was referred to, as I read. And this was Donald Trump's mentor. And you're telling me that Trump isn't all about this shit? So who gives a fuck if the White House LGBT page is gone? Who gives a fuck? When he has loads of these people in his private life. Trump loves hanging out with sodomites. He loves hanging out with pederasts, too. But he's with Epstein, known for the Lolita Express, as Epstein referred to it as. So where did I leave off here? So, to his death, Roy Cohn denied that he was a homosexual, but the Dorian Gray scene of his lying of age said it all. Roy lay in bed, unheeding, his flesh cracking open, sores on his body, his faculties waning, and with a 1-inch slit-like wound above his anus. The wages of sin. The wages of sin. He could be terribly anti-Semitic. Roy was always calling people kikes. Terrible Jewish epithets. Typical kike remark, he'd say kike this or that about money, a favorite word of his. Cohn had no closer friend or more loyal supporter than Cy Newhouse, but it is said that Cohn behind his back called him Jewhouse. What a piece of work this guy is, huh? His life was spent in a cocoon of filth and disrepair. The expression used to describe Roy's abodes time and time again was shithouse, writes Von Hoffman. His bedroom was decorated with frogs, frog drawings, frog paintings, frog decals, frog patterns on sheets on night, shirts on wallpaper, froggies everywhere. It was a room bulging with stuffed animals in this enormous turn-of-the-century townhouse, the plaster cracking, the paint all but gone from the walls, leaks squirting and drafts finding their way through the ill-attended cracks. Now, Donald Trump was under the tutelage of this creature. And you're going to say that none of it rubbed off on Truvada Trump. And I'm sure Trump looked at his buddy Roy Cohn, his mentor, whatever he was, whatever you want to call him. I'm sure he looked at him and said, wow, his problem was that he wasn't accepted by society. He felt conflicted about who he was. We just need to rearrange society to make it more accommodating to homosexuals so that they don't end up like Roy Cohn, except that they have never enjoyed more acceptance than they have now, and they are all living lives like Roy Cohn. So not only are you not helping improve the lives of these reprobates, you are encouraging children in your society to engage in this kind of lifestyle. Again, I like to call it death style, but you knew that because that's what it is. So I'm sure that when Trump waved that rainbow flag that said LGBT for Trump, I'm sure Trump was thinking, wow, I bet Roy's looking up at me right now. He's so proud of me. Fucking retard. I mean, how is it possible to be gayer than Obama and you've only been president for like a day? Well, he's had more years of practice. That is true. He is older. Anyway, let's see what you have to say. ACF, you proved me completely wrong, and in less than 2 weeks, the right stuff has fallen greatly after this crazy doxing by anti-fascists. Apparently, well, that's more than them. Fascination has been abandoned completely, and The Daily Show may even discontinue as well from what I've been gathering on 4 and 8chan, and in the Right Stuff comment sections. I don't browse there very often, but I really wanted to gather as much info as I could to figure out what happened. Well, what I found was pretty disturbing, and at the same time I wasn't surprised by Mike Enoch's appearance. Der Untermensch. Mike's wife is Jewish and promotes all the degeneracy that the TRS people and you rally against. When the fuck have they ever done that? You understand that they're only anti-depravity when brown people do it? When their own engage in the depravity, they just look the other way. They just say, well, they do a lot for the movement, and that's it. Just say nice things about the movement, and all sins will be forgiven. They're like a fucking cult. It's interesting. I get accused of running a cult here, even though when people thank me for, giving them the insight, giving them the courage to get on the right path, get themselves straight, I always tell them, it's not me. Give all the glory to God, which is what they don't do, because they fucking hate God. I mean, if I looked like Mike Enoch, I'd hate God too, but still, that's no excuse. So no, they don't give a fuck. Just do something for the movement and all sins will be forgiven. They talk about red pilling like it's fucking baptism. I saw screen caps from their forums saying like, oh, well, we all had a life before being red pilled, and fucking creepy. So yeah, you repeat memes created by other people and just put it out into the real world by doing a podcast, which is, it's not really the real world. It's closer than just an image on a screen. It's actually somebody saying it, but that's all he does. 99% of what they do is appealing to idiots who get their jollies by hearing their memes said by internet personalities. Wow, they said it. That's so funny. It's funny for a little bit, and then you gotta move on, or else you got problems. So, some have suggested that Mike is also a Jew and was angered when he found out how degenerate his wife was and sought to rail against Jews or something when he found out that Jews actively promote filth. Yeah, and he actively promotes it too, so I guess he's fulfilling that stereotype himself. Something like Brother Nathaniel, a self-hating Jew. Well, Brother Nathaniel doesn't despise the fact that he's genetically Jewish. He uses his heritage as an example of why he left that culture and joined the Orthodox Church. He's not living a lie. He's in good standing with the Orthodox Church, and he's open about his heritage. In fact, his heritage he cites as a motivating factor in him seeking Christ. He said he always wanted to look into it himself, and he never had the chance to in his own community, so he did. He looked into the life of Christ. He looked into the Bible. So comparing Mike Enoch to Brother Nathaniel it's not accurate, no. But I don't think that's true, probably just people who want to make him look worse than he is. Going on with his appearance, I always thought he was on the heavy side, but I didn't think much of it when he made fun of Sargon of Akkad by making fat jokes. Which is funny because... Never mind. I thought to myself, well, Mike obviously can't be overweight. He just made fun of a fat guy. No one can be stupid enough to make fun of a fat person while being fat themselves. It's like poetry. It rhymes. He also made up a nickname to refer to Sargon, Scrotum of Mossad. They also targeted Sargon's black nephew and made fun of him as well. The irony is that Mike has a half-black brother and is also very overweight. Well, I don't think it's confirmed that it's his brother. It is one of his family members, which, that's beyond his control. All right, so, and it is ironic, but it just goes to show you how it's like you're projecting. It's the most played out thing, but he's the fucking embodiment of projection. If you see pictures of him, imagine a four-door on his head, and he totally looks like one of those atheists, haha. I usually don't make fun of someone's appearance unless they're hypocritical assholes like Mike, but even then I still feel kind of bad making fun of him in this post. Don't. I think it's probably because I used to be a big fan of The Daily Show, mostly for the comedy. And then they started taking themselves too seriously. They lost sight of what they are, which are jesters. I mean, they're good at being jesters. I also like their work. I was on their show at one point. But, looking back on my appearance on The Daily Show is very telling. Because there was a segment in the show called The Shitlord Report, and the week's topic on that segment of the show was about the Against Me lead singer, who is a male to female transsexual. And the Shitlord Report that week was based around him ruining his child's life. I wanted to talk about that, but they moved on from it pretty quickly. That was, in retrospect, a pretty big red flag, or a rainbow flag, as it were. The second one was when they were they asked me at the end, like some dumb question about the 50s, like, oh, why do you think it was bad? Fucking, are you kidding me? That just tells you that they think everything went to shit in the 50s, even though the 50s gave us the 60s. Now, this isn't something that I was really thinking about too much at the time. It was an offhanded comment that I'd made on a recent episode I did at that time. This was back in spring 2015, thereabouts. But it's true. The 1950s did give us the 1960s. It was a dead cat bounce. We saw the death and destruction of World War II, and we went into a shell of consumption and keep your head down, don't make too much fuss. Elvis shaking his hips on TV, that's really the problem there, even though once birth control was developed and available, everybody took it, which tells you what they really wanted. The 50s were not too different than the roaring 20s in this respect, and well, you know what happened in the 60s. It gave us a sexual revolution and all of the horrors that the subsequent decades brought as a result of that. The 1950s, in America, it was an infantile decade. And the fact that they want to go back to that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it? And I wish I would have figured that out sooner. Continuing with this comment that was voted as the top comment of the week in the question and comment thread. Another interesting note to know is that these people rake up tons of cash through donations every week and month. I even remember a wealthy patron of theirs donating $2,000 to their website, and they even raised over $16,000 to debate Mike Cernovich. The reason why they had to raise that much money was because Cernovich demanded $10,000 to be donated to a charity if he were to debate Enoch. Now, I'm not sure if this debate will happen, but my point is that these people have really scammed many neo-fags to donate large sums of cash every week and month to maintain their site. They obviously were profiting off their listeners. Well, and another thing about that, the fact that they're so jumpy about the sodomite issue, is it outside of the realm of possibility that they're receiving money from a rich benefactor who is a sodomite? Is it out of the question that they're receiving money from somebody like that? I don't think it's out of the question, given the company they attract. I just read an interesting theory about Peter Thiel being the benefactor of the alternative right at large. I mean, maybe I'll get into that on another episode, but that's something that crossed my path before all of this drama went down. Continuing, I'm glad you don't ask for donations like so many people on the internet. Not only do you provide content every week on YouTube, you also provide more on Bandcamp if people are willing to pay for it. The TRS people just expect you to donate, kind of like Stefan Molyneux for their hard work of talking. But then again, the difference between them and Molyneux is that Molyneux produces tons of videos every week. Thanks for reading, CF, and I really hope your channel will grow and attract many more disenfranchised Christians like myself who felt like they were forced to accept the pause loads in order to look good among their peers. This is also another reason why I got so attached to the right stuff. They initially were against the pause, and now they are more tolerant towards degenerates in order to prevent purity spiraling, which again is just a function of who they are as people. They're living lies. They cover up for their friend who's living the biggest lie. And that's where it comes from. They're covering their own asses. Because they know what they're doing is wrong. I think Aristotle mentioned that tolerance is the last stand of a dying civilization. In this case, they accuse you of purity spiraling if you expose the menace, hypocrisy, and the lack of standards on the alternative right. Following standards is not purity spiraling. It prevents your movement from dying and being co-opted. I don't care how cool your homo friends. They must go back, or they can sin no more and repent, insert Mike Pence meme. Or you could go back to accepting your Lord and Savior, death, you sodomite filth. At least that way you can leave everyone alone. God bless you, CF, and the other listeners to your channel. And the full quote there, it's not from Aristotle, but it is, the full quote is, tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. And who embodies the tolerance and apathy more than the right stuff? Or as we should call them, the butt stuff. Because that's what they're all about. Just as long as you're white. Just as long as you're white, that's okay. But if anybody else does it, then it's, for some reason, it's worse if other people do it. And that, I don't think that quote's from Aristotle, but it's true nonetheless. Whoever said it, it's correct. All right, next. Shalom, CF. People in the Discord chat told me that you like to hear about shitty life stories in relation to the message you're trying to convey. So I decided to share possibly my worst experience with females. Around 10 years ago when I was 15, I met this girl over an online teen bulletin board. Red alert, danger, Will Robinson, danger. I guess it's too late. I've been a member ever since I was, 11? What the fuck? Even though the site explicitly says it is for 13 to 15, or 13 to 25 rather, as far as age goes. Most topics are advice on love, when you have 11, most of your user base is underage. Is this a European online teen bulletin board? They start them real early over there. So, online teen bulletin board, most topics are advice on love, sex, school, family issues, and generally problems a teenager might face. As with most internet forums, the more you post, the bigger reputation you have on there. Being the young, edgy person I was, I got that pretty fast. People were asking me for honest advice, discussing their life with me, and generally looking up to me. Hold on. Flame Warriors. There's an exact archetype that you fill here. Go to flamewarriorsguide.com and go to netrat. Not every young person on the internet is an enfant provocateur. Sometimes they're just a netrat. Netrat spends countless hours in front of the computer and loves to play at being a grown-up. Alright, I'll stop laughing. Yeah, I was reminded of that because I liked reading that website when I was younger. Okay, so being the young, edgy person I was, I got that pretty fast. People were asking me for honest advice, discussing their life with me, and generally looking up to me. Even though I did not offer any substantial advice, but was rather edgy/ironic most of the time, and people found that funny. Anyway, the girl in question was exactly like me in personality, and people often said we'd make a good couple, so eventually we eventually met up. Parading an online persona on that forum, I expected the girl to have done the same, but she turned out to act the same way in real life as she does online. Visually, she was shocking as well. Red hair, piercings, and tattoos, with the edgy metal band t-shirt as a bonus. She, being from the capital of my country and coming to visit, slept at my house. Despite how she looked, I was horny, and I guess we ended up having sex. Well, you guess. You either did or you didn't. Sometime around midnight, she asked where the nearest non-stop shop is so she could buy some cigarettes. Okay, it's like a 24-hour convenience store. Is this like an American story? Are you from America or not? Because I've never heard of the term non-stop shop. I told her that I could go since I had more clothes on me at the time. She said no and went out herself. After around 15 minutes or so, I started to worry. Called her phone, but no one was picking up. Knowing the neighborhood I live next to, gypsies. Oh, so this is somewhere in Europe. Unless gypsies are somewhere else that I'm not aware of. I feared the worst. I woke up a childhood friend of mine. That was my pop filter, excuse me. I woke up a childhood friend of mine and we went to look for her. After around 10 to 15 minutes of wandering around, I get a call from her asking why I'm not opening the door. We get back home and she told me that the one I told her about was not working. That day was on a national holiday, so it could have been the case. Later, after we broke up, I found out she went to buy LSD. Probably the worst thing about us getting together is that I knew next to nothing about her personal life, and neither did she. I met her father probably a week after this, not to her desire. He bumped into us at a city park, looked at me, and grinned. He said he wanted to talk with me over a coffee. We ended up going to their place, and inside I saw police uniforms, a riot shield, and some bullets on the table. At that point, I nearly shat myself, but I also thought that I should pull through this. After a while, he sent his daughter to the shop to get some drinks. At that point, he told me in short her story, as he said he assumed she didn't tell much about herself. Apparently, he's a chief of a local police department in the capital, and his wife died of lung cancer when my girlfriend was at an early age. She basically had him, her uncle, and their grandparents as the only living relatives, but her dad and her grandparents did not want to speak to her at all or acknowledge her in any way, because she had been caught abusing various drugs from cannabis to heroin. Aside from that, she'd been skipping school and as a result is 2 years behind. He kicked her out of his house. He kicked her out of his house because she would bring shame to him, so she went to live with her uncle, who was also a cannabis user. At the time this happened, I was 16 and she was 14. Sometime after that, she came back and I was visibly in shock. Her dad had spilled some coffee prior, so he said I hit my head on the table after I dropped my phone. Then the formal presentation began and she explained begrudgingly how we met and told him some stuff about me. I came from a semi-famous family and had a career in the making, plus a really well-paid job at that point, so he instantly seemed to take a liking to me. He let in a subtle, "For the first time, you get a good boyfriend and not some drug dealer." That's a direct quote from him. Which she seemed to pick up as well and left the room to, quote, go to the toilet, unquote. I still had trouble talking and was visibly trying to make sense of the whole situation. So her dad went in the kitchen. I thought about this whole situation, but remembered all the good times we had, and deep down, I guess I loved her. I decided that I would confront her when we were alone and try to change her for the better if possible. That happened the following day after we spent the night at her dad's, and he went to work in the morning. Visibly upset about the topic, she tried to change it by alluding to sex or talking about music, but I was not going to have any of that. She then proceeded to fake tears so I would empathize with her, but that didn't happen either. I was pretty angry at this point, so I told her that despite my love for her, it's my way or the highway. Being the one to take her virginity, I thought that would weigh in on her decision, and it probably did. She said she'd try and change, but only if I support her and remain by her side. We both cried sometime, after which we decided to share some more details about each other. Because I was on a training course at the Capitol, I stayed at their place. Her dad cooked for us every night after she apologized to him about what she did, and said she would change. Me and him found a school that would take her at that point so she can take 2 years of study and one to make up for her losses. She cut ties with her drug buddies, and after a month or so, she stopped having these weird freakouts, which a friend of her dad said it would be normal. So there's like the withdrawal things. And she's 14. And at the point that, is this sometime in the future? Because I'm not sure, but yeah, she's still very young. Where did I leave off? In the 2 months I was there, she decreased her cigarette usage, but still did not manage to quit them. Her father and I developed a kind of a dude-bro relationship since he was pretty young, 35 years old as well. He'd often help me with advice and direction since I am into guns as a hobby. Fast forward around 6 months of living like a couple for the times that we could. We often traveled to each other's places. My parents, on the other hand, did not know of her past, but told me anyway that she would disappoint me. We fought for some time about her, at which point they gave up and told me that it might be better to have that experience. Thinking my parents are just biased, I disregarded their advice. Well, bias is not the same thing as dishonesty. I mean, you could be biased in a certain direction, doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm sure you know that by now, but as just a general statement, because when I say, oh, you're biased, you're this, you're that, it's the truth. That's what it is. I was feeling like I had died and went to heaven. Everything was right in the world. I did well at school, was pretty popular, had an aspiring career, was earning a lot of money for someone my age. But most importantly, I was in love. One day while at the Capitol, on a business trip, it was extra hot and I got sweaty while going around meeting some other friends from that forum. I thought to myself that I'd pass by their place to take a shower and change my shirt. I gave her a call, but no one's responding. It's around 1300 hours, so I thought that she's probably at school, and her phone is on silent. Nevertheless, her dad had given me a key to their place for such occasions under the guise that this home will be yours and my daughter's anyway. I take the bus to their place and arrive there an hour later. Walking in, I see the most peculiar sight of a bunch of shoes near the front door. I think to myself that it's probably her dad's, and he forgot to put them back in their place again, because he was in a hurry as always. Walking in further, though, I hear loud moans. I walk to her bedroom, and my mind freezes in front of the blurred glass door. I saw a bunch of naked bodies inside. I somehow opened the door without my will to do so, and I saw her in there, laid down in the most depraved position possible. She was there in with 7 guys. 2 behind her, 2 at the side, 1 on front, and 2 masturbating. I still remember this image vividly and often have nightmares including it. I picked myself up after 10 seconds of standing there and left in a hurry. She tried to escape and run after me, I think, but those guys seemed to have trapped her. I ran away to the bus stop and got in a bus to the Central Railway Station and cried all the way back to my city. I did not speak to her for another year. I deleted her from my life. She attempted to contact me multiple times. She even came to my parents' place several times, but I had moved to live in with my brother. When I finally spoke to her, it was out of a desire to know whether at least she is continuing her studies. She tried to convince me that what I walked on then was a mistake and that I shouldn't have been avoiding her and that she was truly sorry and would never repeat that. Yeah, no, it's something like that. There's no coming back from it. All right, let her clean herself up on her own, start anew, and she doesn't have that hanging over her head because she doesn't have that baggage in that relationship with the same person. It's like, you gotta have some self-respect. Like, you can't erase that. You can't erase that image. So yeah, it's better for everybody that you just tell her to fuck off. Continuing. I'll read that part again. She tried to convince me that what I walked on then was a mistake and that I shouldn't have been avoiding her and that she was truly sorry and would never repeat that. I was not convinced and told her openly about that. She then got agitated after some time of me denying her attempts and went into bitch mode, which is when she told me why she left me on our first night and with how many other men she had slept with while we were together. I expected that and told her I hope she sees the error of her ways and settles down with someone willing to accept her, but that this person would not be me. I did a full blood test shortly after that, fearing God's punishment in the form of an STD, but luckily I had none. I took this as God giving me a second chance in life. This is probably the point in life I left my edgy teen phase and started thinking more seriously about religion and the bigger picture, despite many people, including my parents, saying I am too young to worry myself with such dilemmas. Well, it's not the age, it's the experiences. And you had one whale of an experience. I mean, that's an understatement, but we're in the ballpark. Many years have passed since. I secretly stalked through her through a mutual friend on Facebook just to see whether she learned her lesson. She's graduated and is now doing a BA in dentistry. Her father questioned me for some time why we broke up, but I never gathered the courage to tell him. He now occasionally writes to me to see how my life is going and congratulate me on my career, or sometimes request help. We meet once or twice a year when we have time for a coffee and some banter. Most of the time my ex is with him, but we both are quiet. I guess you can never fix a broken woman, even if you take away some vices. She will learn of others. Once a woman has gone down a path of sin, I don't think there will be salvation for them. The only thing I have left from that period is the key that I still keep on my keychain. I know this is way too long to read, CF, and I'm sorry, but it feels good to write this in full for the first time. Well, it shows you how depravity and hedonism ruins lives. How it ruins relationships, how it ruins family bonds, how it erodes the collective of a nation. If you are directing your ability to give a family in all of the wrong ways, the nation, your culture, it's done. It's over. God had to destroy Sodom because those people were never going to go back. They were never going to cease their behavior. They were never, ever going to show restraint, ever. That's why he got the one guy he could find out of there and laid waste to it. Once a collective is given over to that impropriety, it's over. It's done. There's no going back. And reading comments from people like you, because I've read many stories along these lines. You people inform me that Sodom is everywhere, but there's a lot of righteous people out there dwelling within city limits. So with that in mind, I want you people to take care of yourselves. I want you people to watch out. Because there are more fucked up people out there than you can fathom. That person who seems nice, they scan your items at the checkout stand. They're probably doing some shit like this in their personal lives. You never know. Just watch out for that. Be careful. Holy shit, CF, I hope you're okay. News from Northern California. Local man Juan Carlos Filth Steenberg hospitalized with a severe, apparently self-inflicted abdominal damage. Doctors believe he laughed so hard he fractured multiple ribs and cried himself into dehydration in a hysterical fit. Doctors estimate the suspected cartel banker laughed for at least 3 days straight before succumbing to exhaustion. Medics report they found him next to a pile of stickers disparaging the Anglo-Saxon people, slumped over his laptop with a picture of a jolly overweight Russian and his clearly Jewish wife. They reported that they did not get the joke, but flagged him for psychiatric evaluation as the man displayed the hallmarks of exposure to toxic levels of irony. Well, I'm not breaking ribs, but I'm laughing pretty hard. I see, I've just a short story about something that shows how gray and sad the life of Western Europe is. I live in a small Southeast European country with manly Serbian ancestors. Last summer, some students from Germany were invited by the university of my friend. There were 5 or 6 Germans in the group, and our students took them in a house on the lake to have some fun. So people were playing the guitar, singing, drinking some beers, eating barbecue, couples acting normally, no sex in the next room, nobody doing drugs, nobody trying to seduce or fuck the German girls or boys. Just a normal fun night with a lot of singing, laughing, and talking. The next moment when my friend was alone, one of the foreigner girls approached her and literally said, "This is the best day of my life." And my friend was like, "What? You had all the standard benefits and conditions to make yourself a useful and interesting life. Must come to small poor Balkan country to experience some love." And I believe that German girl, CF. There's no more friendship or anything connected with the true sense of love and compassion in Anglo-Saxonia. Sex destroyed them. From the age of 13, the only thing they know when it comes to party is alcohol, drugs, and sex. And now when they see real friends acting like friends, it makes them warm around the soul and makes them normal again. Well, if she's a German girl, she's not from the Anglo-Saxon sphere, but I do understand what you're saying. Western Europe we all know we give Anglos a lot of shit, but it's the Germans too. Just basic camaraderie. Wholesome bonding is completely foreign to the Western and Northern European mind. Remember that Swedish bodybuilder dipshit that I featured in an episode of AFK? I was like, oh, I like sex. And he's talking about marching in a gay pride parade. That's the idea, the Northern Europeans' idea of being wholesome. In Iceland, 67% of children are born to single mothers. And you don't need to get into how bad England is. You don't need to get into how bad Ireland is. It's a cultural void. Like, you showed them just what, just enjoying the simple blessings looks like, what that looks like, and they're like, wow, this is really good. So much that, for one girl, it was the best day of her life. And it's sad, but it's a sadness of their own creation. I'm glad you gave that girl a bit of light in her dark, depraved life, but she put herself there in the first place. What's Germany's age of consent? 14. Next. Salutations, CF, long-time listener, second-time poster. First letter I sent you back was back in 2015. First thing before I get started, when you Google Common Filth, you find a Kiwi Farms. I think they're forgetting what a lolcow actually is because they think you're one. Well, what are you going to do about it? On to the topics at hand. I was listening to Common Filth Radio 124, and one of the things that was brought up was Josh Holmes saying that he gets crystal meth at the gay bars because they have the best meth or some disgusting shit. I find this interesting, and I would like to expand upon it. Because Josh Homme himself is a fuckhead and is clearly a homosexual even though he's married to a woman. I remember one summer I was really into Queens of the Stone Age, them Crooked Vultures. I'm not a stoner, I swear. I have and never would touch drugs in my life. I just like the weird sounding music. Alright, that's fine. Wait, hold on. Now, I think the guy I was talking about was Jesse Hughes, and I understand that Josh Homme is a part of the same band. They're in the same band together, at least they were, last I checked. But anyway, I'm sure he's depraved all the same because, well, look who he associates with. So most bands are pretty much the same, but I remember taking a look at Home before he opened his mouth and knowing he was a fag. I'm not sure if this is too quick of a judgment, but getting back on topic. The way he acted, trying to be funny and a bit strange, made him stick out like a sore thumb, and it seems like I was the only one seeing through his bullshit. Anyway, it turns out that he is, not only is he a faggot, it turns out he is extremely controlling and was the reason his former band broke up. And after they tried to get back together without him, he sued their asses for using the same name and were forced to change it. Also, you talked about a subgenre of vaporwave where it is focused on nostalgia. Well, I'm going to expand upon that too. The subgenre of heavy metal called thrash metal, speed metal mixed with hardcore punk, that was really big in the 1980s, died out in the 90s, when all the well-known thrash metal artists started sucking and metal no longer getting public attention. Anyway, due to the internet in recent years, the genre has had a comeback of all sorts of new bands who, while some of them being really talented, wish it was the 1980s while ignoring the hardships of the time, or anything that is not the consumerist nonsense of the 80s, being part of the reasons why music like thrash metal was popular. You have bands like Gamma Bomb singing about zombies, video games, and thrash covers of the Ninja Turtles theme song. You have bands like Lich King trying to be not serious as possible while making a song like Agnosticism, where the lyrical content is, haha bro, we're too spineless to commit to any side of this. You can't really know if God is real or not, haha. You're saying a lot there. Very brave. Or a recent song they made called Cut the Shit, where one part of the song was telling off another band that they did not even have the balls to say their name because they wrote songs about how the government is corrupt or something. Then Lich King decided to bash them because, haha dude, like everyone knows there's corruption in Washington, so no need to sing about it. Also, your music won't change anything, so just be spineless like us. You have bands like Bonded by Blood who try their hardest. Yeah, here's what I don't understand. You're making a statement song about how you don't give a fuck about anything. And then you're telling somebody, oh, why are you making songs about how not to give... Why are you making statement songs? Who cares? You fucking care about your apathy, dipshit. Yeah, bands like Bonded by Blood who try their hardest to sound like another band, in this case Exodus, even going so far as to naming the band after their most popular album. And that's all modern thrash metal is. I mean, hell, they even try to dress like they're from the 80s. Honestly, this shit pisses me off because it feels like the only people who make thrash anymore are posers who don't like thrash, they just feel nostalgic for it. Anyways, I apologize for how long this has gone on for. It's just something not known by people who don't like metal. In all honesty, I could go on for a while about how there have been sodomites and Nazi LARP pagans attracted to black metal because it's anti-Christian / satanic. Also, shout out to the band Ancestor for sticking to their guns. They're Christian black metal. Yeah, I know how cringy it sounds, but trust me, they're good. Who over the course of 20 years have had death threats sent to them by many people, and nearly having their shit kicked in by a mob of Brazilians who tried to picket their gig and beat up their fans. I recommend checking out the album The Forsaken, God Bless. Well, What CD is shut down, so I'm not consuming much music these days. Yes, I had a What CD account, and yeah, I miss it. I miss What CD. Not as much as I would have a couple years ago if it got shut down, but, you know, it was still a nice resource to have, so... Yeah, I had my What CD account since 2010, and they got shut down last November. So, take this time to give it a rest in peace. But what you talk about speaks to a broader issue among, let's just say, predominantly white genres of music and predominantly white cultures, is that they're so stagnant. They're just dead. Like, in comparison to, say, something like hip-hop. Where it's like, I'm hearing stuff that I'd never thought I'd hear. Like, it's just, they're writing songs that people have never written before within the hip-hop world. Whereas it seems like predominantly white genres of music, they're just rehashing the same shit over and over again. It's stagnant and boring. And it doesn't seem like there's any way out of it. There are exceptions to this. There are people doing some pretty unique things, but they're on YouTube. Like, they're doing their own thing, and they're getting good audiences doing it. I've encountered a few myself, but that's where it's happening. It's not happening on a mass level. It's all on the micro level rather than the macro. So it's sad, and I know what you're talking about, but I think this just speaks to the broader issue of where we are. Next. Good day, CF. So by now you probably heard of the self-destruction of The Right Stuff. It's probably no surprise to you, being that you predicted it. I did too, the moment I heard that their forum was run by faggots and trannies. Not because faggots and trannies suck at politics. On the contrary, they are near absolute masters, second only to Anglos, and God help anyone up against Anglo-tranny faggots. No, the problem was that TRS's official mission statement either is or is a synonym of, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, fasci goys, and all that. But those 14 words are the exact opposite of what faggots and trannies do. Rainbow people can't even have children in the first place. The only place they could possibly have in a white nationalist organization is as a suicide squad, since they're already dead. Not as leaders or managers of anything. Faggots are suicidal, and anything they manage will commit suicide. The leaders of TRS thus proved that they were either stupid enough to not understand the contradiction, or that they were too beta to exercise command and prevent their own movement from metastasizing a cancerous deep state. They ended up with their own CIA, and the results were predictably the same as the real one. This lack of willpower to do what you know needs to be done seems to be a pretty common thing in Anglos or anglicized people, which is ironic because they were the ones that made a fetish of unleashing the will in the first place. William of Ockham, 14th century. Perhaps they were simply hyper-aware of their flaws and tried to compensate. But given how in denial they are about every other flaw they have, I doubt it's a general thing. Utilitarian hedonists can't sacrifice anything even when they know they need to. My own father understands the horrible detriments of the current system and has frequently worried about the declining numbers of the white race and the importation of kebabs, but he still votes for our country's Socialist Party because my union. We're not Anglo by blood. Rousseau, Quebec, well, that's weird. But we are Anglo in spirit. It's not terribly hard to prevent these things from happening if you have the character to do so. A man I enjoy reading and corresponding with, Reactionary Future, spelled it out in simple words. How do you form a political organization that is not a mess? You do it from the top down as you would a business or an army. You have your core startup team, staff of generals, political party leadership, led by a clear leader with a clear command structure and an understanding of their roles, the project, and the organization. These people then secure their resources, have a clear direction, and then set about recruiting staff, soldiers, people. The recruitment process is one way and selective. They don't just open the door and let anyone come in and tell them what to do, how to do it, and what their direction and goals should be. That will give you a rabble of idiots. This presupposes the startup team / general staff / political party heads have a fucking clue what they're doing. which if they're liberal crack smokers, they won't. Of course, being right-wing, it will be dressed up in some variant of freedom and thinking for oneself, which roots back to the legitimacy nonsense. Leaders smoking liberalism will also have all sorts of bizarre notions which will render organization a mess. So we have a small core who knows what they're doing, which then develops a plan and organization, and then recruits according to this, and the authority and doctrine flow down. For a political party specifically, this process will require a small and very intelligent core of thinkers, fluent in the political party's theory, so as to be able to develop doctrine. A formal gatekeeping mechanism must be in place. A political journal, for example, there must be a clear party as well, no secrecy. The party must pretty much be recorded and open. Claims to be able to maintain anonymity in the modern era are absurd, not possible at all, and the party leadership should be visible anyway. It's not a terrorist organization and not a threat to the government. The gatekeeping must also ultimately fall to a single person, much as Mussolini did with fascism. Any non-official claims to doctrine must be rejected and attacked, something that wouldn't be difficult at all. Unlikely wouldn't even occur at all. From the end of the recruit, they must simply accept they know nothing and have nothing to offer until they learn and are trained. Those not willing to join as recruits and instead attack with their own ideas are enemies to be dealt with by the party leadership. They may engage the attack openly and may even learn from the arguments, but they don't let them join or claim to be of the party. The doctrine is right, not you. But this all depends on the party leadership having a fucking clue, which is the fatal stumbling block. Note how TRS did everything wrong. They were all anonymous and thus vulnerable to doxing. They had no formal chain of command beyond the leader. They valued human quantity over quality. And they had no axiomatic doctrines to dictate the practical goals of their organizations, which changed arbitrarily as time went on. And most crucially, they had a lying cuck leading them. These kind of people might mock you for being a defeatist when you don't join them, but you know that a leader is the foundation, the arc of everything, and if he is not a good one, then the whole project is in vain. And you know this because the Son of God explained it 2,000 years ago. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. But no, what does that Jewish volcano demon have of value for white nationalism, they laugh, as they are blissfully being led by a literal philo-Semite from New York. And a homophile philo-Semite at that. This is what happens when you are a decadent afraid to sacrifice. I hope you've enjoyed being right again, CF. God bless and best wishes. Well, that's why I keep coming back for more. And that is an excellent comment. And next, hey CF guy, I just finished episode 126 or whatever it is. I have to say that episode was the best in the world as worldly things go. Anyway, early in the show, you were talking about faithlessness and a lack of loyalty in women, particularly Sweden. Some of those wenches have been with 50 men and they're just 18? What the fuck? Please don't stop reading because I'm about to bring up a source of debauched insanity, but I'd like to bring up my experience with the Tinder dating app so far. Well, why are you on Tinder? Delete Tinder. Tinder, as I found, is full of nutjob women and scam chatbots with a variety of predictable bios. The meme bios can go as follows. 420 friendly, blank if you're the one, let's go on an adventure, I'm boring, emoji of guy girl, girl girl, which is code for bisexual, open relationship, send me your best pickup line, love, Trump's hate, or any variant of anti-Trump obsession, love beer more than you, love drinking, a lot of alcoholics under 19 by the way, and I encountered at least one obviously man gone trans woman, and many suspicious chins. Man gone trans is a great line though, I'm going to use it more often. I did match with a woman who didn't have any of this nonsense and eventually told me, yeah, I've already been super liked by 2 different couples looking for 3 ways. Super liked means you get a notification of who liked you so you're more likely to like them back and shit. By the sounds of it, she found it just as revolting as I did, and we've made plans to share coffee one afternoon soon. But as far as Tinder goes, I've found it's mostly rubbish people on a rubbish app. You may encounter Bible quotes or love God every now and then, but I've seen it mixed with 420 friendly. With my next semester for computer engineering coming up, I'll be plenty busy, but I still look forward to your shows and hopefully the attentions of a woman who doesn't want some oversized dildo and source of weed. Keep it good, CF guy. Well, don't do anything stupid. Don't rush into things if you know what I mean. You met her on Tinder after all. That's all I'm going to say. What do you think of the story of this black ex-Trump campaigner and her son? It's clear to me that she put her faith in man, and both her and her son paid the price. It's very ironic how the Trump fags go on about based minority here people, but would turn a blind eye to what this mother and her son has gone through in an attempt to help Trump and the homeless problem. Well, they really only like people if they're some kind of deviant. All right, Trump likes trannies and homosexuals, therefore his straddlers do. His fanboys and girls are all about that, more than they are about, well, what you're talking about here. The Trump fags would most likely blather on about it being fake and that Pastor Manning is a Hillary-supporting Soros-funded shill or something stupid like that. It just goes to show that the jizz drinker wannabes of the new right really are racist liberals. Yep, and they will make no difference because they are no different. Fundamentally, it's all the same shit. All right, and they're able to get away with it for a time because, again, the medium is the message. People listen to how something is said more than they listen to what is actually said. And you know what? Those people are stupid. And do you really want them on your side? I don't know. But I have not listened to this yet. I will eventually. Maybe I'll talk about it. But yeah, Trump is a shyster, and that's that. See, if I'm so appalled by submissive men, whenever you bring up the topic of dominatrixes and beta males, I can feel my stomach genuinely churn. Strength, forwardness, assertiveness, and a good heart is what makes men attractive in the first place. Yeah, I know what you're talking about here. It's in reference to an article on Twitter that was brought to my attention. It was really sick and just, yeah, stomach churning. You put it nicely here. I love my boyfriend's domineering personality and loving heart, and the thought of him being some passive pseudo-man with a fashy haircut makes me feel like I'm covered in bugs. Submissive males cringe me out on a primitive level. All I have to say to them is, get the fuck away from me and fix yourself. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, this is some fake thing written to me, but no, I know who this is. She's been listening to the show for some time. And what I'll say to this is that you have functioning female instincts. You understand that it is your duty as a woman to pick the winners. You understand that if men are spineless bitches, civilization crumbles, which is what we're dealing with now, mostly. So, yeah, you have functioning female instincts. You understand that if you don't have strong men, you're fucked. We all are. And it's women who are the most vulnerable. Because even a weak man, he has a fighting chance. All right, just because of how he's built. Women don't have that advantage. Women don't have that advantage, which is why you feel your skin crawl at the idea of a spineless bitch of a male. And that's it. That is the bottom line. Going to start attending a church for the first time ever. I have a Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox church nearby, which you recommend and why. Comment here, response. Visit both, sample the environment, talk with the priests. Unless you're heavy into theology, stick to the one you're more comfortable with, rather. Here's what you can expect. It's a link to a image. Yeah, okay. And also don't take communion in either of them. I'm assuming that you haven't confessed any sins to the priest recently, so to take Holy Communion would be a direct affront to the way things are done in the apostolic churches. As the other guy said, visit both and talk to the priests if you can. And another thing is that I can't in good conscience recommend anybody become Catholic under Bergoglio's reign. I can't. Next, Salam CF. Wanted to share a painful anecdote. Roughly 3 years ago, I got myself into a long-distance relationship. She was 17, or I was 17, rather, and she was 20. You were 17, she was 20 when it all started. I used to like to pretend that things always went well. They did not. She would talk to her exes who still lived a ways away, but it made me feel uncomfortable, disappear every other weekend, and tell me I was overreacting if I ever complained about anything or showed a lack of trust. There would be some nights where she would have a breakdown because things got hard and then she'd try to break up with me. I'd talk sense into her and try to cheer her up. Then the next day she'd act like nothing was wrong. I put up with an immense amount of shit for someone who for nearly 3 years never once came to see me. When she left me, I was not sure why, and I'm not sure I want to know why anymore. This woman was heavy into My Little Pony and secretly into furry shit. I put up with it because I thought I could change her. Surely a 20-year-old woman would straighten herself up if a strong man came into her life. One who wasn't an alcoholic, who didn't beat her, didn't abuse her. I was wrong. She never straightened up. Well, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife, and you can't turn whatever this is into a housewife. Out of curiosity, I looked at her Instagram the other day and noticed she was wearing a fursuit. I was shaking with more anger and disgust than when she had left me. I calmed myself and prayed. I didn't feel any less resentment, but I felt less anger. No, it's the second person who says that they still stalk their, this person they were involved with on social media. I gotta say that that's not good for you. Don't do that. That means you're still attached to that time in your life and you need to let it go. You need to let that part of your life die. If some sort of shitty situation happened to you, if you found yourself in it, you got to move on from it. You can't remind yourself of it. All right, the brain has a thing where it sometimes, not always, it leaves out the bad parts. You just think like, oh, well, those were cool times in my life, even though you aren't remembering the baggage that it included. You're not remembering that at all. And that's why you just need to move on and not look back on poisonous situations such as this. Just this is the second time I've seen this from the second different person, and it needs to be said. If something poisonous like this happened to you, if you're in a poisonous situation where something worse could have happened to you, don't look back on it. Keep moving on. That's all. To end my post, I want to tell everyone who listens to the show, if you're dealing with a woman with issues from home, and especially if she follows childish pursuits, dump her. She will betray you. She will not come to your side. She will choose immediate satisfaction over that of the satisfaction had by having a loving spouse and family. And note that when I say childish pursuits, this could literally mean anything other than God or building a healthy family. Such as sex, Pokemon, fascism, politics, yeah. If you're into a right-wing girl, first of all, she's probably not a girl. Let's just get that out of the way. And yeah, it's if you see a woman getting male attention when something in a very male-dominated sphere, and she's getting a lot of attention because she's in that sphere, ho. Straight up 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 ho. Did I say it enough? God bless, and keep up the good work, CF. Well, I'll keep trying, and you stay sane out there. Somebody asks, I'm curious where all you guys find people like this. I've never encountered a furry. I personally know of one tranny that I went to high school with, but I'm not remotely friends with him and never see him. And that's about it for the pause, apart from your standard promiscuous and party drug-using 20-somethings. I live in one of the most paused cities in the Western world, loaded with black-framed glasses liberals too, and I just never encounter any of this stuff. Well, and to you, I would say that I'm definitely in that camp because I don't know, the God-given power of discernment, where I just know that something is off about somebody, and I don't allow myself to deal with them. So I've been very fortunate in the kind of people I've dealt with in my life. I've never encountered any of these freaks, but I read stories all the time of people ruining their lives over just their dubious passions, and that's how I form my worldview. I realize how truly blessed I've been in the kind of people I've had in my life, where I've avoided these disasters like you're talking about here, like my reader or listeners rather are talking about here. I read what my listeners write, and I realize, I realize it even more how blessed I've been. And, I don't know why God gave me that ability, more than others, but, the more I look back on my life, the more I am thankful that I have it. Because I see how just by associating with people like this girl who's into My Little Pony and furry shit, just associating with a woman like that, it causes so much stress for you people. Just being within the dysfunction's gravity and not directly engaging it in yourself, it just drags you down. And And I'm very glad that I have avoided these situations for my entire life. I'm glad that I'm able to, gather wisdom from the experiences of others without having to actually, have these experiences myself. So I thank you people for writing in and telling me these things. I am really thankful for it. Couple more. ICF, if Christianity is an army and it is, what role do you see yourself in? Sometimes I see you and your followers as this a partisan guerrilla group, and the weirdest places the regular churchgoer would be afraid to go. Cheers, Christ conquers, Christ reigns, Christ commands. I think that's a good one, because we're doing some pretty unique work here. It's, I think, unprecedented in the scope of the internet, where you look at the depravity instead of just looking at it and saying, oh, look, you put it into context. You say this represents the zeitgeist. The depravity we engage in is indicative of some serious problems in our culture, rather than just pointing at it and laughing at it like, say, like the Web 1.0 guys like Maddox and Lotax. No, we take it one step further by relating this depravity we see all around us to a moral foundation, which is what people, up until I arrived on the scene, failed to do. That's all. Next. Is it entirely possible that you can dedicate some future episodes talking about the Bible and how it relates to the present condition? I'd like to hear more about your perspective on it, because I really enjoy the content that you create. I'd like to hear more from your influences in later shows. That is a good idea, but the reason I hesitate to do like a full Bible study program is because a lot of people, they get turned off by that. They're really afraid of it. I don't, not afraid might not be the right word. Hesitant might be a more accurate word there. You start talking about the foundations of religion, and in this case, Christianity. A lot of people, they shut themselves off to it, which is why I like to pepper in relevant parts of the Bible throughout the show. Just in my experience, people are more receptive to that, where you talk about current events because it's something they can relate to. It's happening as they are alive. They get it. And you relate it back to something that was written a long time ago. And they say, oh yeah, that makes sense in that context. So you have to speak people's language to some extent. And I think that I've gotten through to a lot of people by doing that. But it is something that I have thought about. But in the meantime, check out Rome is Burning. romasburning.show is their web address. They're also on YouTube. They do some excellent work over there. Okay, next. Hey, Steve, just a heads up. I wanted to share a story I heard on the show Crime Watch Daily with Chris Hansen. Why don't you have a seat over there? It was a scandalous report involving a stripper, a gay-for-pay male prostitute, and a sacrilegious perverted priest. To begin, this crowd storm takes place in my hellhole of a hometown, New York City. The Catholic priest, Father Scully, has been embezzling money from parishioners to fund Chris Keith, the prostitute, to engage in BDSM and to have the priest become a toilet slave. Didn't I talk about this story? I think, no, this can't be a different story, can it? Because I remember early last year, one of the first shows I did in 2016, it was like an almost exact thing. So this has to be the same one. I mean, could it? I don't know if it's different or not, but we'll read on. Father Scully embezzling money from parishioners to fund Chris Keith, the prostitute, to engage in BDSM and to have the priest become a toilet slave, self-explanatory. Also, the priest embezzled $25,000 to purchase a house in New Jersey to perform his perverted acts. The stripper named Tatiana is the one who exposes the two to the Archdiocese of New York City. Her connection to this degeneracy is that she was dating Chris and was aware of the master-slave proclivities those two had. Just like you said, CF, the homosexual fears judgment more than death. The priest and the prostitute continued to bribe Tatiana with the money, which backfired. Once the Archdiocese was appraised of the situation, Scully was excommunicated, and he resides in his perverted sex mansion. At the end of all this, the black hole of nihilism results in nothing. Nobody repents, sin continues. Even though there's rampant corruption in the church, my faith in God and Jesus will never falter. P.S. There needs to be some sort of psychological background check when one attempts to enter the priesthood. Yeah, how about just normal, regular family men? Actual fathers of children who have wives, who aren't geriatric virgins giving relationship advice to people. All right, how's that for a start? And this has to be the one I talked about early last year. It's on in the Best of collection, Best of 2016 collection. It's the track is called Catholic Toilet Slaves. And that's what the church seems to be right now. The Catholic Church is a toilet. What a perfect story to describe. You get it. Sup, best in Mexico? Yeah, there are still crazy people out there. These crazy people who have like nothing to their name but like 30 Twitter followers who think that I'm Mexican. Anyway, I thought I'd share a little story that took place yesterday in my own house. My parents are divorced, but once in a while we have lunch together since last year, after more than a decade of being divorced. Ridiculous, isn't it? This time, things got very political, and since they're lefties, they praised the current pope. I told them I didn't like him because he didn't fulfill his duty to stick to tradition. Suddenly, we were discussing immigration and gay rights. My father said something like, "There's no ultimate truth." I think that's also something that Richard Spencer says, who, the more I look into him, the more I realize that he's like the Eat, Pray, Love author for white supremacists. That's what he is. Oh, you didn't do anything. It's not, there's no ultimate truth. Just do what you want, as long as, fucking retard. Anyway, I told him he was wrong and he was being morally relativistic. Next thing I thought was, yeah, this is why my dad is a lousy Christian. He can't even possibly truly believe in God. Anyway, I used an argument from Stefan Molyneux that is simple. I told my dad that it was not possible to deny an objective truth, since denying that would be a form of objective truth. I'm not sure if I said it in the best way, but I'm sure I got it right, and he sort of ignored it all. All I got back was a fluoride stare. Yeah, because he's probably never heard something like that. Then my mom, at the end of the argument, when we were all getting pretty tired, told me the stupidest phrase, something like, "You can never be certain of anything. You must always doubt everything." I took it in for a second and then told her that it was false because if you must always doubt everything, you are certain of the fact that you must doubt. My mom, being smarter than my dad, bursted laughing and told me I always had a good eye for paradoxes. So to sum it up, it was a pretty strange but enlightening experience for me. I mostly keep my opinions to myself. I know they're hardcore lefties, and their divorce broke my heart, but I still love them and I want to respect them. Did they have a best friends ceremony from a trans man faith healer? Did he preside over the whole thing? No, I kid because I care. When I was framed as being a mean and intolerant person, I simply told them that I didn't want to kill the gays like Castro and Che did. They often praise these political figures in Cuba too, so it was a good argument to use to shift the blame. I asked myself, how could they end up like this? They're not white trash. They're smart, college-educated, middle to upper-class people. I think in part is because they're baby boomers, but that's because another story. Well, the middle to upper-class thing is a pretty uniquely baby boomer feature. So they exist in a strange world. It's just somebody told me this. I can't remember who, but they're the product of just this experiment, and that's why they're just not like anybody else. So, I mean, you can blame them, but at the same time, are they really aware of how they were produced? Like, in what zeitgeist they were formed in? Do they have any awareness? It's hard to say. The conclusion is that these times are crazy. I never expected my life to be like this. Growing up, I thought I'd be more liberal than my parents. Instead, my parents are so out of touch with reality that I am the one that has to put his foot down in order to maybe have a decent future for our family lineage. Their notions of family, nation, values, and religion are shameful. The core values are messed up, and I somehow have to pick up the pieces. God bless you. Take care. And maybe that's your role in life, and you know what? Do it to the best of your abilities. We need more good people out there. Top 5 nu metal bands. I don't even think I can name 5. Like, what are we calling nu metal here? See, if I look it up on Wikipedia right now, I will be cheating. That will be considered cheating, right? Because then it'll tell me. Nu metal. Let me guess. Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit before it loads. What's wrong with my internet? Load, damn it. Load. So did I name 2 right there? All right, let's see. Okay, Cohn, Limp Bizkit, and Kid Rock. Okay, so those are the ones that referenced in the opening paragraphs of the Wikipedia new metal article. Cohn, Limp Bizkit, Kid Rock, Papa Roach, Stained, POD, and Linkin Park. Okay, so I named 2 top 5 new metal bands. I'd love to hear CF address some of the critiques from this thread. Well, this is buried at the bottom, and I'm a little tired, so I'll save that one for later. But I have acknowledged it. It's merits of Christianity from some form. Is that what it is? Yeah, it is. All right. So I will bookmark this and maybe get back to it later. Think about it, see, because, you know, for subjects like this, it's harder to shoot from the hip because you got to be thorough. So for things that require some thoroughness, I will be thorough. For things that just require, you know, they not require, but you can get away with shooting from the hip on them, I will do that because that's mostly what I do here. But, you know, where the initial response is the correct one, I think. You know, it's not until you say the words that you start getting political about them. Hey CF Faithful, Serbian follow here. My question is, what's your stance on gaming and video games in general? It's very bad if you play them all day. Davis Arini, who is putting out some excellent content these days, pointed this out in a recent video of his where, you know, he just talked about like you'll feel the spiritual hangover if you play video games all day. And it's true. I think about the last time I played video games all day, I didn't feel any better at the end of the day. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, playing video games is really bad for you. Playing video games all day anyway is really bad for you. Now, as something that you do to unwind at the end of the day, that you spend, you know, an hour or 2 before you go to bed, I think that's fine. But to make a lifestyle out of it, I think is really unhealthy. Unless, of course, your job is reviewing video games or doing Let's Plays, but I don't know. I guess that's a legitimate profession now, so yeah, I'm sure that real life starts seeming a lot more interesting if that's your profession. But no, I don't think games in and of themselves are harmful. It's just that you can't make that a primary focus of your time. All things considered, it's probably not your profession to play them full time, so yeah, that's a bad thing. All right, I am almost to the end. Maybe, possibly. Anyway, this one says, "Greetings, CF. I'm just here to leave a comment about some things I heard in Common Filth Radio at the best of 2016. It seems that you have an idea that the Third Reich and National Socialists of the 20th century worshipped their race. You also said that they lost the war because they worshipped their race rather than God. Well, I think my perception of them is colored by the ones who cosplay as Nazis on Twitter. Or like, oh, Deus Vult, by the way, Hitler did nothing wrong. And then, you know, they sometimes they'll have a flag as their avatar. And I'm just like, I think to myself, if you were a Christian, you'd burn your flag. Because your nation's doing some bullshit that's against God, so burn your fucking flag. Burn it. If you're going to pledge your fealty to God, I think you need to burn the flag in this day and age. Which I plan on doing despite Truvada Trump, by the way. But no, all these Christians who are like, oh, my nation, my race and nation, they're not. Because there are things they place above God. They won't burn their flag. They won't even criticize their own. There's nobody I don't criticize on this show. So if I can do it, why can't they? The answer is because they're not of a mind to. They don't want to self-criticize or self-regulate. They just want to pretend like their group is perfect and it's fine, and criticizing them will somehow lead them to ruin because, again, in the depraved millennial and Gen X mind, judgment destroys everything. The only thing they fear is judgment. And that's why Gen Xers and millennials identify with sodomites so much. It's ultimately a fear of judgment. Which is why you criticize a group of people, they say, that's defeatist, that's harming. No, it's not harming. The only way it would be harmful if it were a lie. If it's the truth, they're doing it. They're doing what you were criticizing them of doing. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Are we all on the same page? Criticism is pointing something out that already exists. You're not creating a new crisis for what you are criticizing by virtue of your criticism. No. Is there behavior that creates the criticism? But again, I'm referring to people who have no concept of cause and effect relationships, so maybe it's just a waste of breath. I don't know. Not to you who wrote this specifically, just the personality type I'm thinking of. So, this one, you say this cannot be further from the truth that they worshipped their race and that they lost the war because they worshipped their race rather than God. You say this cannot be further from the truth. You probably get this idea from these modern fasci alt-right faggots who use Nazi symbols ironically or appropriate the term National Socialism to describe their retarded Anglo-white nationalist ideology. Well, you read my mind because I didn't read that part before I said what I said. So, yeah, we seem to be in agreement here. These people are in fact totally opposed to the National Socialist worldview. National Socialism was and is explicitly pro-Christian, pro-family, and anti-faggot. There's been no other post-Enlightenment movement that has ever come close to National Socialism/fascism when it comes to God's law applied to human society. National Socialism/fascism is in fact a total revolt against the modern world. It stands in opposition to everything, and I mean every single thing that you talk about here, including compromise and inability to take personal responsibility. They did not sacrifice Christian morality on the altar of racial purity like these fasci fucks seem to think. Thanks for taking the time to read this. If for some weird reason you are still convinced that National Socialism is about the worship of magic blood, I can provide you with plenty of literature and speeches to disprove this. It pains me to hear someone like you shit on something that is in complete accord with everything you promote here. I leave you with a Hitler quote. We tolerate no one in our ranks who attacks the ideas of Christianity. In fact, our movement is Christian. Well, I will look into it more for your sake. Again, I'm not one of these retards that dismisses somebody for having a label of ideas that's beyond the pale. I do dismiss people for having behavior that is beyond the pale, shall we say, which is a lot different. But you have to understand, when I'm talking about these people, I'm using the ideology to describe a personality type that the label attracts, right? And you say that they do not truly fit within the label. And you know what? I have no reason to doubt you. My assessments on things are based on the current crop of people who are like, I'm a Nazi, and the current crop of racially conscious people, they're pieces of shit. Because racially conscious now is a code word for just, I'll excuse any behavior just as long as the people who look like me, they do it. As long as my people do it, it's fine. Fucking pieces of shit. That's what they are. Next, how's that hammer hanging? Are you getting rain on your end of Cummy's Fornica? It's pouring here. A little bit of rain. Nothing I can't handle, though. So I have a few golden retriever girls on my Facebook, and this one especially loves to go on and on about inauguration and being a white good ally. She told me one time in a restaurant that a black family walked in, so she toned down her whiteness because it was so white in the restaurant. I feel bad for her. She joined the weirdo cult of queerness. Literally, she did. She joined a queer sorority, and they convinced her she is pansexual, and they do these Masonic-like rituals. Wait, is that pan or just pan? Convinced her she is pan, and do these Masonic-like rituals. I feel bad for this girl. She isn't retarded, but easily influenced and very malleable. The type of person that really could use a husband. She went from a piece of shit guy to the next till she got herpes from this real piece of shit that wanted to turn her out. A college student whose dad pays for everything almost got talked into being a sex worker. Quote unquote sex worker. That's how she phrased it. It wasn't whoring, it was sex work. Yeah, you call something by a different name and then all of a sudden it changed, which is why it's, they say the beginning of wisdom, calling things by the proper name. She was going to perform. She was acting, not actively destroying her soul. It sucks how this more or less innocent dummy is being tossed around in college life and has been used up. She posts articles about being 20 and knowing you don't want kids. She is talking about going to get her master's in creative writing and she wants to teach. Goddamn, you were so right about shit. It's a little scary. Again, I'm not predicting things. I am describing things. Common Filth Radio is not predictive. It is descriptive. descriptive. I don't need to research anything. It's all documentation. If you have half a brain, you'll get it. You could see what I see. It isn't that hard. You just need to put good thoughts into your head. You need to have a solid foundation. You need to have a method by which you judge everything. Is it good or is it bad? And all you need is a half a brain. That's all. You don't need to worry about anybody else. Just focus on doing what's right. And you too will have an accurate ability to describe. Goddamn, you're so right about this shit. It's a little scary. That's what you say. Well, I'm out here. I'm twisting in the wind just like you. Wondering what the end game of all this is. Why these people are the way they are and how bad it's going to get before the plug is pulled. I don't know. But I talk because, well, nobody else talked for me. Nobody else shared my perspective on life, my thoughts about things, so that's why I started talking myself. And it turns out that, yeah, my thoughts aren't right because I say where people are going to end up, and that's what ends up happening. Next. What are your actual thoughts towards racism? I don't mean what you think of it being some nerd shit now, but what do you think of it in principle? Well, seeing how people who look like me behave, I realize that racism is counterproductive because it prevents you from seeing what your own people are doing and how horribly lost they are. And using that shared perspective of, you have a common genetic circumstance, using that to reach them. If you're constantly fixated on what other races are doing wrong, then you're never going to improve yourself. You're never going to improve the station of your own. So it's counterproductive. That's all. And finally, how's it going, CF? I've been thinking about a somewhat heated conversation I had with my mother recently. To be brief, she's pretty much the polar opposite of a decent Christian woman in nearly every respect. Pro-sodomite, pro-abortion, atheist, tolerance out the wazoo, etc. With that said, I managed to get along with her well enough considering the circumstances. Simply put, we avoid discussing matters of religion, politics, and anything even peripheral to the issue of fags. However, a few nights ago, the topic of homos was unexpectedly broached in response to what I believe were some comments she made regarding Mike Pence. While I'm no lover of Mike, if you like cock, you're in for a shock, Pence, I took this opportunity to subtly present my position on the queer problem, as it were. Not sure why I thought this occasion would be different from any other time we had this discussion, but perhaps I was just in good spirits. Surprise, surprise, she got more than a little incensed, spewing out the usual bile that these enablers are submerged in. At the end of her spiel, she insinuated that due in part to my relative young age and lack of real-world experience, it would be foolish of me to make such a sweeping judgment. This is the focal point of the question I posed to UCF. Does an individual's age have any substantive bearing on their ability to reach an informed, reasonable, God-derived conclusion regarding the world around them? No. No. That was your mom talking herself out of the corner. She realized that she was wrong, that there was no way she could reason her way out of it. So she said, oh, you're just young. That's all she was doing, weaseling her way out of it. This is a tricky one since it is heavily based on the context of youth in question. On one hand, obviously there are plenty of instances where the opinion of some young swinging dick buck should be taken with a grain of salt. I have a feeling that I don't need to tell you about the youth's susceptibility to corruption, especially when they're raised in this modern hellscape we call the West. Well, and look at what they're susceptible to. Oh, you're feeling bad about yourself. That means that you must be trans. Oh, you're this. You should explore your feelings. All right, look, that's what they're susceptible to. So if you're behaving in the opposite way that most youth behave, you're doing it right. You realize that they are wrong. You are right, and age has fuck all to do with it. Your mom's stupid, as she's stupid in so many other respects. On the flip side, a kid from a good home, preferably with a Christian foundation, has the potential to be far more cognizant than the average prole. I certainly wouldn't be one to dissuade a fourth grader from expressing his or her disgust in the face of some form of moral deviancy. Yeah, you tell them that, it's a teachable moment if they, they express their disgust at something. You don't discourage them from feeling that disgust, because if you discourage them in that moment, that's going to change the trajectory of their life. Because then they won't. They'll be like, oh, I can't do that. That's rude because, somebody I love told me. Don't express disgust at this disgusting thing. So yeah, you let them, if they show a healthy disgust response, let it be. Because that's the right one. It would be tempting to just assert that a youth speaking in the absence of the Lord's work is not to be considered a reliable source, but I'd rather find a way to refute this argument in an irreligious sense if at all possible. Not looking to lose a debate before it even begins, which is a shame, but you know how it is. Anyway, thanks for your time, CF, you dirty enchilada guzzling Jewish mulatto fuck. No, your mom is making excuses. And somebody like that who's just going to make excuses saying for their stupidity and saying, oh, you're just young, you don't get it. When she's the one who doesn't get it. Truth is the truth, and you get there through experience, and through that experience, you get wisdom. And it's not the years that you put into life, it's what you put in the years. So, the fact that you're able to come up with the correct conclusion, despite of an apparent lack of real-world experience, shows that you are making the most of the real-world experience that you have, even if it is limited. So, good on you, and I hope your mom stops being stupid. And that's all I have to say for this week. Because that is the last comment, and I'm out of things to say, so thank you very much for listening. As always, t-shirts back in stock, all sizes, get them while they last. This is Common Filth Radio. This is the best in the world. I will talk to you later.